What's up, guys? MTG Matthew back with another video. Long time no see. I've been a bit absent because, standard was being standard. But now we had some nice bans. Orange Epiphany is banned, Divide by Zero is banned, and Faceless Haven is banned. I'm really excited about all those bans, just because they're gonna shake up the meta. And on top of that, today was the review stream for Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, a set that I'm super excited about. I think it's gonna be a real home run. Looks really, really cool. And we got a bunch of preview cards, so preview season has officially started. And I wanted to go over the new mythics we've seen, or some of the new mythics. Just talk about them, my first impressions. I won't go over all the new cards from today, because spoiler season is always this like big new thing and everybody's doing videos about it. So I just want to focus on a few cards that I find interesting and that I want to talk about. So let's jump right into it and start off with Jin Gitaxias Progress Triant. The PRAETOR is back, and yeah, this guy's potentially a big deal. So let's read it. It's a 7-mana 5/5 in mono blue, legendary creature. And it says, whenever you cast an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, copy that spell. You may choose a new target for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. And then the second ability is, whenever an opponent casts an artifact, instant, or sorcery spell, counter that spell. This ability triggers only once each turn. So this guy is obviously a crazy creature. It's in blue, and as we all know, before the banning, blue was one of the best colors because of the Ether combination with Orange Epiphany. And also, like, blue has Leer, and they have Hullbreaker Horror, and now they have Jin Gitaxias, which just continues this, it seems like a trend of very powerful blue creatures and blue top-end cards, right? Especially for control decks. And Jin Gitaxias is... So for one, this is a really, really nice reanimation target because, like, for obvious reasons, right, you want to cheat it out at 7 mana, but especially the fact that it protects itself to a certain extent, right? So let's say you cheat this out at 5 mana with some kind of reanimation spell, or you've ramped into it, you play this, it's just a 5/5, but if your opponent tries to remove it with some instant seed removal, or let's say with a Blizzard Brawl, the first one of those spells is going to get countered. So your opponent needs at least 2 removal spells to deal with it, unless, your opponent has a way to, like, kill it in a different way with some activated, triggered ability or Planeswalker or something like that. But apart from that, very good protection, right? And I could imagine this card in like maybe some kind of Dimir shell, where you run some reanimation spells, and this is one of the big targets, maybe alongside Hullbreaker Horror or Toxrill the Corrosive, right? All these good like control tools. And yeah, the thing about Jin Gitaxias for me is that, as I said in the beginning, this just continues this trend of powerful blue top-end cards right after, Orange Epiphany got banned, and, now we still have Hullbreaker Horror, and obviously Jin Gitaxias is a real powerhouse in combination with Leer. Actually, let me take this back, right? Because Leer says spells can be countered. So actually there's some good, like, balance there, that Leer with Jin Gitaxias is actually nice because you get to copy the spells you play from the graveyard, but you don't get the counter trigger from Jin Gitaxias because spells can be countered. So then it's really just a creature that copies your spell once a turn, which, now that I think about it, maybe Leer is just a fine combination, but it's not super broken, overpowered. What's also interesting about this creature is that you also copy artifact spells. Right from the top of my head, I don't really see artifacts you want to copy with this. Maybe if you're funny, you play this in like a Simic shell, and then you copy your Essiga's Chariot or something. But yeah, Yeah, I would say you play this really in like a reanimation shell, maybe in Dimir colors, or you ramp into it in Simic colors, or at the end of the day, Izzet could still be really crazy with all those treasure tokens. Izzet still has a gold span dragon, and you could just put one of these into your deck to seal the deal. So Jingitaxis, I think the more I talk about this card, the more I realize it's probably just fine, even if you reanimate it. But it can also be a win condition, right? You copy spells, and especially in Dimir colors, the thing is, divide by 0 is gone, right? So this was one of the good cards you can learn with. If you're in Dimir colors, another good card to learn with is Eye Twitch or Hunt for Specimens, right? And you can even copy the Hunt for Specimens or all the learn cards you get. So that's that would fit well in the Dimir. So Jingitaxis, certainly a powerful, interesting card. It's 7 mana, but you can cheat it out or ramp into it. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about this one. And actually, the more I talk about it, the more I think this card might actually be okay. Hopefully. Next up, we got another mono blue card in Tesserat, Betrayal of Flesh. So we got 3 new Planeswalkers today. A lot of them, plus you all got the Kaito Planeswalkers, so I assume these 4 Planeswalkers are gonna be all the Planeswalkers for the set. So Tesserat is a 4 mana 4 loyalty Planeswalker in blue. Has a static ability. The first activated ability of an artifact you activate each turn costs 2 less to activate. So obvious artifact synergy, as always with Tesserat. +1, draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards unless you discard an artifact card. -2, target artifact becomes an artifact creature. If it isn't a vehicle, it has base power and toughness 4/4. And -6, you get an emblem with whenever an artifact you control becomes tapped, draw a card. So very heavy artifact focus here. I've gone through the standard collection to just see, are there any juicy artifacts right now in standard before Neon Dynasty that would benefit from this activated ability effect, right? And the most juicy one I could find was Liftform Engine, which is this legendary artifact from Zendikar Rising that never saw any play, but it lets you pay 2 mana to copy an activate or triggered ability, 3 mana to copy an instant or sorcery spell, and 4 mana to copy a permanent card. And with Tesserat, you reduce all of these costs by 2, which means that you can copy activated triggered abilities for free, which can be really cool. It's probably very janky, but Liftform Engine is only in standard until the next rotation now. And I've tried so often to make use of this card because I love Liftform Engine and it was never used. And maybe Tesserat is a way to, get the costs down for activating it and then actually make it really good. So that's some fun stuff out there. Apart from that, there wasn't actually much right now, speaking of artifacts in standard, that would really benefit from this. So that being said, let's look at the +1. You draw 2, discard 2 unless you discard an artifact card. So as I said, there aren't really a lot of artifact cards you want to run. Like some decks, obviously they run the Celestis, for example, but that's really it. However, I think this could still be interesting in decks where you actually want to fill up your graveyard. Right? Draw 2, discard 2, you basically favors losing every turn, right? And this can be nice with Leer, which gives you access to your graveyard again. If you're playing some type of blue control deck, maybe Dimir control deck, right? You fill up your graveyard, you cycle with Tesserat to find all your stuff you need. But then still, I mean, you get through your deck fast, but your deck really needs to be built around that, because right now there aren't really nice artifacts to use, but I'm pretty sure in the rest of spoiler season we will see more artifacts that could benefit from this. Then the -2, target artifact becomes an artifact creature. If it isn't a vehicle, it has base power and toughness 4/4. So this is a way for Tesserat to protect himself. And there's one artifact which is actually very common in standard right now, and that is treasure tokens. So again, I'm going back to Dimir a lot in this video. If you play Dimir with your usual make treasures on the board kind of stuff, this like Tesserat can come down -2 and make a 4/4. And obviously you, in a way, you pay 1 mana for it in case that creature / that treasure dies. But still Tesserat protected himself, right? So it's actually a fine ability. Nothing too crazy though. And then -6 is you get an emblem with whenever an artifact you control becomes tapped, draw a card. Now what's really funny about this is that I think you need to tap treasures to sacrifice them to get the mana. So if you have the emblem and a bunch of treasure tokens and you sack them for mana, not only do they give you mana, but each of them also draws you a card, which is pretty crazy. Yeah, the emblem is obviously can be very, very good, even just with stuff like the Celestis. Get to draw cards, has nice synergies with our Teferi, who can untap artifacts, you can tap them again. I mean, it's always rather bad to evaluate Planeswalkers based on the ultimate. But this guy here comes in with 4 loyalty. If you +1 on the first one, he's already at 5 loyalty, then you plus again, he's at 6. And then you get to ultimate. So in a control deck, it's probably not that unlikely to get to the emblem, and then those treasure tokens you have draw you a ton of cards. So all in all, my conclusion is for Tesserat, we definitely need to see the rest of the spoiler season first, because the static ability is certainly pretty relevant to evaluate this Planeswalker. And if there are enough good artifacts that you actually also want to play in your deck, so the +1 actually also nets you a card, this can be a decent Planeswalker, but nothing too crazy. But again, it could be fine. It cycles you fast through your deck. With Lear, it could be really nice. Next up, we've got the Wanderer, basically. So the Wanderer was a Planeswalker that showed up first in War of the Spark, and it never had really an identity, and it turns out it's this Emperor from Kamigawa that, you know, its spark got ignited, and now it's wandering around all these planes. So the Wanderer is basically back. It's a 4 mana white Planeswalker with 3 loyalty. It has Flash, really, really cool, I like that a lot. And says, as long as the Wandering Emperor entered the battlefield this turn, you may activate her loyalty abilities anytime you could cast an instant. So what you can do with this Planeswalker is actually play it on your opponent's turn and then activate one of her loyalty abilities, which are +1, put a 1/1 counter up to 1 target creature against first strike until end of turn. So what you can do is, if you have a creature on the board and you block one of your opponent's creatures, you can flash the Emperor in, +1 that 1 creature, give it first strike, and this way potentially get ahead of this block, right? -1, create a 2/2 white samurai creature token with vigilance. So again, if your opponent is just attacking you for lethal with some creature, you can create a blocker. Or what's also cool is you can flash this in, create a samurai, and this way, if you do it on your opponent's end step, in a way the samurai has haste, right? Because it can attack right away. And then -2 is really cool. Exile target tapped creature, you gain 2 lives. So if your opponent attacks with a creature that does not have vigilance, you can flash the Wandering Emperor in as a removal spell to exile the creature, gain some life on top of it, and on top of that you're left with a whole Planeswalker that can still put 1/1 counters on creatures or create another samurai token. So the Emperor, I think there are a lot of there are a bunch of flash cards right now in the Azorius Shell, obviously Hullbreaker Horror, but there are also a bunch of other cards if you really go through your collection. And I've been seeing this a long time, that more and more standard gets filled up with actually cool flash creatures in blue and white. And I think some kind of Azorius flash deck can really have potential, especially with stuff like the Wandering Emperor. And the way I would evaluate the Wandering Emperor is really treat it as a 4 mana removal spell for an attacking creature that exiles the creature and gains you 2 life. And on top of that, you get a Planeswalker that, you know, puts 1 counters on your creature. So if you want to play this in stuff in like an Azorius Shell, you should definitely have creatures you want to have out on board and not be like a non-creature deck, although you can always put the counters on your Hall of the Storm Giants. And then on top of that, she can also make you some samurais, which are actually nice because they have vigilance, so you can be aggressive with them and still have a blocker up. I think the Wonder Ember is just a fine card, really. It can be like a fine removal spell that gives you some upside. It's not too crazy in any way, but I just like it. I think it's very decent, and as I said, treat it as a 4-mana removal spell, which is a bit overcosted, but you get a Planeswalker on top of it. And also there's this spell from Strixhaven. What's it called? Semester Graduation, something like that. It's a 4-mana instant, also in white, that lets you flicker creatures and planeswalkers, and then can come back at your end step. So you can even flicker this on your opponent's turn. That comes back, and you can activate the loyalty abilities again. That's some shenanigans you can do. But all in all, I think it's just gonna be a fine planeswalker. That's gonna be, I think, one of those solid planeswalkers. You know, not too crazy, but you're just happy to play it as a removal spell, and then it gives you another body or puts one counters on stuff. So, seems pretty cool actually. And our last planeswalker here is Tamio Compleated Sage. Compleated Sage. So, it's got a crazy mana cost. 2 generic, a green and a blue, and then a Phyrexian hybrid Simic mana. So this hybrid Simic mana can either be paid with green, blue, or 2 life. And Tamio has a static ability of Compleated, I don't know. You can pay it this way, and then if life was paid, this planeswalker ends with 2 fewer loyalty counters, which means what you can do with Tamio is you can play her on turn 4 or with 4 mana if you pay 2 life, but then she comes in with just 3 loyalty counters, or you pay 5 mana for her, and then she comes in with the full 5 loyalty counters. So Tamio, a Simic planeswalker, has 5 loyalty counters. +1, tap up to 1 target artifact or creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. -X, exile target non-land permanent card with mana value X from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of that card. And -7, create Tamio's Notebook, a legendary colorless artifact token with special cast, costs 2 less to cast, and tap, draw a card. So this one's really interesting. First of all, you can, pay 4 mana for this if you pay 2 life, and then it comes in with just 3 loyalty counters. And then you can start plussing to shut down opponent's creatures or artifacts. And the artifact part is actually really interesting because you can tap down Essiga's chariots, right? The chariot won't get to crew, or it can get, it can crew, but it won't be able to attack. So that's actually really relevant if you're up against mono green, and in one way or another you have been dealing with the early board, and then your opponent plays Essiga's chariot, and you have some ways to deal with those cat tokens. You could play Tamio early to just deal with this Essiga's chariot, right? So that's pretty cool actually. And but one thing I found most interesting about Tamio has nothing to do with her itself, but rather with another planeswalker, which is we have Cosminas from Strixhaven. And Cosminas is a 3-mana planeswalker, also in Simic colors, that gives all other planeswalkers her abilities. And Cosmina has a +2 abilities, let's describe one, right? Which means if you have Cosmina out and Tamio, what you can do is +2 Tamio the turn she enters the battlefield, so she immediately goes to 7, and then the turn after you can immediately ultimate her, which is I think it's a cool, interesting play pattern. And in that case, you get to -7 right away, create Tamio's Notebook, a legendary colorless artifact token with special cast, costs 2 less to cast, and tap, draw a card. Now that Notebook is obviously really, really nice, like paying 2 less is a lot, and tapping to draw an extra card each turn is also a lot. It's permanent though, so it can be just removed by a Prismari command, by a This werewolf, the sacks to destroy artifact or enchantments. It can be destroyed by binding the old gods. So that's an obvious downside. Obviously, like an emblem would have been a lot better. But still, if you know, I imagine some kind of band deck where you run Tamio with Teferi, and then you have this notebook that you untap with Teferi each turn to draw another extra card each turn. This seems pretty nuts, actually. So that's some play pattern with Kasmina, right? But apart from that, so the +1 protects her. That's pretty cool. Tapping down stuff is nice. The -X is also interesting because the -X can also protect her, obviously, right? You can just create a token of any non-land permanent, so you can even exile sagas, and we're getting sagas in Neon Dynasty, which is really cool. Also, obviously, there can be any color, right? So there's, for example, this new 5-mana saga in all colors that, or it's like 6 mana, right? That, you know, and a battlefield exiles non-land permanent. You could do stuff like that, or you play this in like a Soul Tie shell, and then you play Tamio -4 to get a binding the old gods, destroy non-land permanent. That seems like really good value. So the -X is really interesting. You can get anything back, creatures, even other planeswalkers. That's actually crazy. There's a non-land permanent card. Damn, that's actually so cool now that I think about it. You can get bindings back. Basically, if you play Tamio for 5 mana, she can get any non-land permanent for 4 mana from your graveyard, and you're left behind with a planeswalker that can tap down stuff every turn. That actually seems really cool. Yeah, maybe the -X is actually the real cool part about this card. Huh. Yeah, maybe play this in a Soul Tie shell. This seems awesome. Oh man, yeah, Tamio seems really cool. You tap down stuff, you get stuff back from your graveyard. I love it. I actually love it. Now that I think about it, the -X is huge. You can get, for 4 mana, if you play this in a Soul Tie shell, you could play Tamio on 5, and for 4 mana get a Sorin, right? And then the Sorin makes a token. So for 5 mana, you would have gotten a Tamio with 1 loyalty counter, a Sorin with 2 loyalty, and the Flying Vampire token. Damn, that's actually sick. Huh. That's actually super sick. Okay, the -X is kind of crazy. You can also get a Esika's Chariot for 4 mana. Damn, this is crazy. This -X is really good. Wow. Okay, Tamio is sick. Now that I think about it. Okay, Tamio is awesome. I love this card. Love this card. Definitely want to try it out. Alright, those have been all the Planeswalkers plus Jingy Taxes, and there's been one more card I want to talk about, which I found it was just too cool to ignore. Mirrorbox. 3 mana artifact, just 3 mana. The legend rule doesn't apply to permanents you control. Just permanents you control. Each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1. And each non-token creature you control gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control of the same name as that creature. You can have multiple planeswalkers. What the hell? This is so nice. You can have multiple Esika's Chariots, also, although it's probably not that crazy. But dude, this card is so one thing is for the floor of this card is Jank Dream. So at the very least, this card is gonna make for some fun games where you have like multiple of the same planeswalkers on board, but I even think this could be a legit card. Really. It says all permanents, so it even applies to lands, which is interesting. I mean, we're getting some legendary lands in Neon Dynasty, but apart from that, in the current standard, it's actually not really relevant. There aren't, I think there are 0 legendary lands right now. So might be relevant in the future, but not for now. Each legendary creature you control gets +1/+1. This is just some like incidental value that can still be nice. Like if you know, like Leer is a legendary creature. If you play this with some Leer in the deck, incidentally Leer is now a 4/5 instead of a 3/4, which is actually pretty relevant. And then if you have multiple creatures out, they don't need to be legendary, but multiple creatures of the same type, each get +1/+1 for each other creature with the same name. Man, Mirrorbox is dope. I don't know what. Like really cool interactions are stuff like if you have two Lows out, two Low Spider Queens, right? Both have the static ability, so they both benefit of creatures dying at the same time, and then they produce more spiders. That's super crazy. Damn, Mirrorbox is... I love this card. Definitely want to build around that. And yeah. This sim is really nice. Actually, I don't have more to say about this. I just think this is gonna be... It's gonna be a super fun card. And also, Neon Dynasty is gonna provide us with a lot of legendaries. Also later in the year, we will visit Dominaria, so it's likely that we'll also have a lot of legendary creatures there. So Mirrorbox is really, really nice. But that's my 2 cents from me now. I definitely want to get back in the Standard now after the bans. It's only 2 weeks until Neon Dynasty, but in the meantime, Standard got shaken up, so I definitely want to brew again. Try some cool stuff, hope that some more strategies are viable. And then hope you guys enjoy the videos, and I see you guys soon.